And I say that because, to me, it had a storyline very much like Star Wars in the sense that I think it really tapped into a very universal theme. And I think we're all, as people, asking questions, where we've come from, where we're going, what is humanity. And I just think that Battlestar Galactica really tapped into that human theme that all of us can relate to. And I know that I was always a science fiction fan my whole life and loved science fiction. And I was really, really desperately hoping for that second year where we would have had a number of, I believe they were talking about Isaac Asimov or someone coming in as head story writer. They were talking about doing a number of things, but the big thing was we would have that second year to really launch that show. And I just felt that without that second year, we really didn't get the chance that we deserved. ABC and Universal were feuding over revenues and financial concerns, and unfortunately, there was a lot of politics involved. I think we were in the top 20 for that year. We debuted at number 5, and I don't think there's ever been a science fiction show in mainstream network television, a series that ever was that high, ever in the history of television. So as far as I'm concerned, it really was a landmark show. And I've always dreamt that this show would have a second life. I always felt that this show never had a chance to really begin to explore that whole storyline, that whole fleet, all the incredible human stories that could have been told. And I, for one, have spent the last 3, 4, 5 years, I've written a trilogy of stories. I've written a number of possible storylines, evolving the characters and evolving the situation for where we ended prior to Galactica 1980. And I finally met with Extreme Comic Books just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they came to me, and Rob Liefeld and those guys are incredible. I mean, they're 27, 28 years old, and they have created this incredible multimedia company, but they love Battlestar Galactica. They brought back the show. They just had their initial comic book offering. I think it sold out 100,000 copies. And they're now doing the second one, or the second one I think is out already, but they asked me if I would write, stand up, show those to everybody. And they so graciously asked me if I would write some of the stories for them. So, of course, I said yes, because really it was a dream come true to be able to have some input into Battlestar Galactica, and even though it's comic book, and I think comic books are incredible. You can go anywhere, do anything in comic books. So it's the second life for me, and I'm only hoping that at some point somebody gets smart enough to realize what happened with Star Trek, that there's an incredible community of science fiction fans out there, and I think that there's a crossover. I think people who are in science fiction support science fiction. And I really believe if they made a Battlestar Galactica movie that there would be a lot of fans out there that would come support the show. So any of you that might really support that theme, please, once again, write in your letters, please, and write in your comments to Universal Studios and let them know. Okay, thank you very much. And just like my hallowed guest over here and compatriots, I am open to answering any question that you may want to come up with. Thank you.
I'm just mainly interested in what's the most, I'm interested in alternate endings. I guess this is directed to Mr. McDonald. What's the most interesting ending that never happened? I mean, what's the alternate story that never occurred?
Fire in Space. If you're familiar with the episode, at the very beginning, the Galactica is attacked by a suicide squadron, a kamikaze squadron of Cylon fighters. And ultimately, they crash into the Galactica and blow up the bridge. Dama is put into a coma, and Ty is running the bridge. And the ship catches on fire, and it just keeps spreading and spreading and spreading. And there's other little storylines going on with Boxey is trapped, and they have to use the Daggett, and Richard and Dirk have to go out on the ship at the very end and set some charges to let to blow a hole in the hull so that the vacuum of space will smother the fire and put it out. the ending that you saw was this ending, and they go out on the hull, and I remember being down on the set when they were shooting that particular scene because they used a lot of rear screen projection and front screen projection, and it was just a big empty sound stage. Were you actually being flown at the time, or was it a double? I don't know that.
No, I think I was being flown.
Yeah.
And your masks were,
Flown a lot lately.
and your faces kept steaming up.
You remember that?
Sure.
So,
I was flying around you, watching you, remember?
So anyway, they're out on the hull, and I guess they're trying to get back into the ship before this thing explodes, and all of a sudden, coincidentally, this rung breaks loose, and one of them goes tumbling off into space, and they're going to be hanging right over where the explosion occurs. And the other one launches himself and grabs him and pushes him out of harm's way, and then Sheba picks him up. Well, and how she got him in the ship is beyond me. I have no idea, but we won't even discuss that. Okay, that was what you saw on the air, and I was objecting to this right from the get-go. The original ending was that they go out on the hull to set the charges, and just then the Cylons come back with another suicide run. And they're out there and they got to dodge things, and in comes this one that breaks through, and just in the nick of time, Apollo has to set the charge just so it blows up and hits it at the exact instant. And I thought, oh, this is going to be such a great ending. You know, here they come back. What's going to happen? How are they going to get out of there? How are they going to take this thing out? And the network came to us and they said, we don't like the ending. We said, what? This is a great ending. They said, no, you did this at the beginning, so they've seen it already. So don't do this at the end. We don't want this at the end. I fought and fought and fought and fought. And so you got the crappy ending that's there. So, I mean, comparatively, you know, I really like the first way. It was much more exciting. So.
Okay, I have your attention now. I've been enjoying what you've been saying, by the way. To Ann and Richard, I grew up on Battlestar Galactica. I was in my teens watching this. I had the Viper model. I was so cool, you know. I had it all. And then they took it off the air, and, you know, I was remorseful, but like a teen, I went on with my life. And then later on, I saw the splice and dice versions. And they had the 1 2-hour one where you had Count Ibley, right? Which I thought was really an excellent, the way they did it, you know, was really nice, and you guys were all great in it, and I love the struggle and everything. But I was wondering if you all shared my contention that Space Above and Beyond is just a pale imitation of the original, if you've seen it.
Oh, that's what it's called now? That episode, oh. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either.
I agree.
I guess we should.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But bringing up that Ibley episode, let me just throw a couple of things out. They needed, Glenn wrote that episode. Just a couple of things about it. One is that he didn't know what to call Ibley. So it was our job to come up with a name for him. So being that the show delved into mythology quite a bit with names like Apollo and Cassiopeia and biblical names like Sheba, obviously, I went back and I found in Islamic religious doctrine, I think it's Ibley is Satan. So that's where the name came from, in case anybody was interested. There's also 2 other things about it. One is there's a scene near the end when Apollo goes back to the planet where Ibley's ship crashed. And he looks inside and he sees something, and you never see what it is. And she was there and says, well, what was it? Don't look, don't look. And you never learn what it is. Well, in the original script, you saw it, and it was cloven hooves. So you knew that it was, I don't know how devils can die. This is another thing, but that's what was in the ship. And ABC went nuts. And God, I mean, they thought that the children were going to be having nightmares by seeing something like that. So that's what you don't see. The other thing is, the first time they go to the planet where the ship crashed, we used infrared film to shoot it. and that's in the first half of the show. And it has this real weird look. The second half of the show, they ran out of the budget and didn't have any more. So
Remember
it's just
they had
normal.
to keep the film in those frozen
Yeah.
suitcases because it had to be
Yeah.
cold all the time.
Yeah, and I also remember that when Apollo dies in that particular episode, and the angel ship comes to revive him, and they have him on a slab in this glorious room. I remember the set originally. They had these big hanging things that looked really good in the episode that you saw, but when it was originally shot, they looked like shower curtains, and I think they were, and they had to be replaced. They scrapped the whole thing and had to reshoot it.
But that was shot twice, too,
Yeah,
if
right.
you recall. And the first time it was shot with the angels were little children.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
And then,
Yeah.
after the whole sequence was shot, we reshot it again with giant people in white outfits.
Yeah.
I mean, they were like 8 feet tall in white outfits, and the shower curtains were gone.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I started to talk about at the beginning. You see, they shot it again. Meanwhile, I always had it here, you know. Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
There was another thing about that show, the Count Ibley show, that I'll never forget as long as I live, because it was so funny. We couldn't say it. If you remember, I am under his spell and quite, just think he's the greatest thing in the world, and I'm totally under his spell. And there was a line, there was a scene actually where he kissed me, which I think was completely cut. And the last thing, the whole scene is not completely cut, but I think the kiss was gone. And the last thing, he's standing there in his white suit with his white big collar behind him, and he was beautiful. He looked like a birthday cake. And I'm in this very sweet little pink dress, and he comes toward me, Patrick McNee, God bless him, and he puts his hands on my shoulders, and he looks me in the eye and says, "Nothing can harm you as long as I am inside you." Well, and I'm there in my transfixed state, and he'd say it, and I go, we couldn't shoot it. I tried looking at his left ear. I tried looking I could not look, and he couldn't get it out either. And he would do his best to be his beautiful, wonderful British, and say this with all the conviction he could muster, and the two of us would fall apart. And finally, we had to call Glenn to the stage, and Glenn came down. I said, "Glenn, he can't say it. I can't say it. We can't. It's just not a right thing to say." You're never going to. He said, "Oh no, if you just say this and play it with, with the intention that he's got you on, his spirit and his spell." And I went, "Yeah, but he's saying nothing can harm you as long as I'm inside you." I mean, it's like, Anyway, so it took a long time, and we finally had giggled ourselves out, and we finally managed to get this line shot. And then, of course, ABC went, "What? He can't say that to her," and they cut it, and that was that. But that was the Count Ibley show. That was my favorite line any character on Galactica ever said to me.